So, hey, what's up, guys? So, I did a spoiler podcast called the Take One Spoilercast a while back, and that was my podcast essentially for me just doing spoiler reviews on whatever it is I want to talk about, just spoiler filled. And so I thought about it. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I renamed it. Now it's called the ST podcast for spoiler territory. And this is episode 1 of that podcast. Thank you for listening and everything else. And what better movie to start it off with than Captain Marvel? Now, this movie, by now, I've seen it 3 times. And I really did enjoy this movie, even after the 3rd time of seeing it, especially seeing it with other people. I seen it with like other people every single time I saw it, but after the first time I saw it with my nephew, his wife and kid, and then saw my pops, and just getting their reactions on certain scenes and stuff. I just love going to movies and just seeing it with someone else and just seeing their reactions on it. Even though I've seen the movie before, I just love it. Especially, I'm just thinking like, okay, let me see how they react. Let me see how they react on this joke, on this action scene. This happened and all that stuff. I just love it. But just simply, this is a spoiler-filled spoiler-filled discussion on Captain Marvel. So if you haven't seen it, then tune out, check out my review, watch the movie, and then come back. If you don't care or if you've seen it already, then go ahead, continue listening. But this is your spoiler warning for the ST podcast and Captain Marvel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started into it. Got out a few things. I'm not trying to run this podcast too long, which I feel at that a lot, really do. I just, coming into this film, I thought that, how can I say it? It's some things that I wish I could have seen. With the whole twist of the Skrulls being good and not evil, and then not all of the Kree, I don't even believe it's all of the Kree, it's just a lot of the Kree are evil and everything else. I thought that, the direction that it seemed to have been going in before the movie, that I thought that probably would have been better, because I love the whole story of the Kree and how they can, shapeshift and going into different planets and infiltrating it from the inside and then taking over. Like, to me, that is a story that, put in the right hands, could be a great movie, a great story for a great movie. And I thought that that's where they were going, because to me that was just gold. And they took a whole twist, which I'm not saying I hated it, but I wish I could have seen that movie with that enemy and everything else. And just one of the other things that went along with it was just some of the other things I wish I could have saw. Just the whole, like, when Veers or Captain Marvel is with her team at first with Jude Law's character, I forget his name in the movie, but when they start walking towards the ship, they have this badass scene where they just walking in slow motion and just all that stuff. Like, that just looks so cool to me, and I'm just like, man, I wish I could have seen them in more action scenes and more, doing more as far as like action, if it would have gone the route of Skrulls being evil and they have to protect and everything else. But I mean, we won't get to see that, but at the same time, they did do some badass things up in there. But one of the things that was going through my mind when I heard that Jaimon Hansu was up in this movie, playing the same character that he played up in Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. And in that movie, I remember him being, bad, him being a bad guy. So I'm just thinking like, okay, he's on the same side. Before going into this movie, I thought that he was going to be a bad guy right off the bat. I mean, he still is, but, I thought it was going to be like prevalent, like, yeah, he's a bad guy, he's worked for Ronin, blah, blah, blah. But the beginning of this movie, he's portrayed as, he's on the good side. So I'm thinking in my mind, like, he's a bad guy in Guardians. Like, how does he get from being a good guy to a bad guy? And so we got the answer that he's always been this route, but it was just at first it was misdirect. And so I guess you could say in some type of way it kind of gave it away that by the end of this movie he may end up turning bad. But that was one thing that was running through my mind is how are they gonna turn him bad? Like what's gonna happen? He's gonna flip on somebody at some point of this movie and everything else. And yeah, I don't know, like whatever. But the scene, getting to the scene where she breaks out when they capture her and they try and what? Dang, what? I ain't gonna say contract. What's the word? Just get some of the information they need from Captain Marvel, from like Dr. Lawson and everything else about the Tesseract and everything else, which I'm gonna get to later on. But it's the scene where she ends up breaking out of her, like the things that was covering up her hands or whatnot, and she had blew a hole up in the ship. And I'm just looking at it. The third time watching it, I noticed that the Kree, or not, the Skrull soldiers that were up in the room, and they saw that like she had blew, like the thing was about to give way, and the door was open. It was like, why didn't they run out the room instead they just grab on to something because they knew it was about to blow open? Like, to me, I'm like, I would have ran back out the room. Like, forget trying to hold on to stuff, because all of it, that didn't really help. And they ended up flying out anyway. So it was like, why would they hold on to something instead of just clearly just running out the room? I don't know. Like, I could see why all of them died, because they're just stupid. But that was just like something I noticed. It was just whatever. But one funny scene that I picked up on the third time watching it, and a lot of times you have to see a movie multiple times in order to pick up little things. Because the first time you just want to experience it. The second time you pick up a little bit more. The third time you're going to pick up on way more than that. But yeah, one thing that I had noticed, that when they had pulled up to the scene after she fell through Blockbuster, you hear one of the cops yell to Coulson, like, "Hey, rookie, go talk to the rent-a-cop." And I'm just like, I started laughing, because I'm like, I did not hear that the first two times, and I thought that was just like hilariously funny. But also jumping, and I know I'm jumping all over the place or whatever, jumping from one scene to the next or whatnot, but I'm just going how my notes are written. But the scene where she was talking about, when she was talking to Jude Law's character about her having a life on what they call it, like C-53 or something like that on Earth or whatnot, and he was like, that was the Skrulls putting thoughts into your head, and she said like, no, this and that. Why didn't she bring up the picture? And she brought it over to she showed it to Nick Fury. So why wouldn't she tell him about it? It was like, I just simply hate when movies do that. It's like, you have a chance to tell something that is actual fact, or just give a certain piece of information that will probably squash the whole conversation and turn it into a different route, but you choose not to. And I'm just like, I just hate when they do that, because he over here saying like, no, you basically you tripping. And then I would have been like, I saw a picture with me, and Dr. Lawson, like, this is real. It was just like, why didn't you mention a picture? And I thought about that like just the first time watching it. I'm like, that I don't know, I just hate when they write stuff like that. It just, yeah. But yeah, getting back to the Skrulls being good, I just didn't like that twist. I like like I said, I like the whole thing with them being bad guys and infiltrating, and then it just made them look soft. I know with them being like, I know they can't be that kind of a species to where they don't have any soldiers, people that can really, really, really fight, like, some Kree soldiers and stuff like that. They have the technology, they have the power to shapeshift, so that should be easier for them. But it just seemed like they all just got punked out, just one by one, just punked out. And I'm just like, dang, so no wonder you guys are like being, terminated and, just killed off, because you don't know how to defend yourself, like, even for survival. Like, I just simply don't know. Like, that's just one thing that just truly bothered me about it, but it just they come off looking really strong to end up to just really looking kind of weak, and I just hate that whole aspect, and I think that's why I really hate the whole turn where oh crap, I just saw something in the shadow or whatever, but I just hate the whole aspect of them being good guys and now they're just weak. I just hate that, and I think that's what turned it from me. Why I really wasn't a big fan of them being good instead of bad. So I don't know. I want to see where they go with this. I'm very curious to see how they proceed forward with this. But now we learned that Captain Marvel, it wasn't Kree blood being pumped inside of her that gave her powers, that it was the power of the Tesseract. Now, it's been a lot of discussion on the Tesseract, which I'm going to get into like a little bit, but yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, her getting her powers from the Tesseract, which she would be the third person, as far as we know, to get their powers from the Tesseract. Oh, not the fourth person, because we got Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, as well as Vision, who uses the Mind Stone to, basically his life, source is part of the Mind Stone, and his power comes from the Mind Stone and everything else, as well as Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver when he had his stuff, and now her power comes from the Tesseract. So she's the fourth person in the MCU to get their powers from an Infinity Stone. So I kind of I'm kind of thinking, like, are they gonna use that? Are they gonna go somewhere with that, use it in the storyline or whatever in the later MCU film? So I'm curious to see how they're gonna do with that. Now, as far as the Tesseract, a lot of people are having like doubts, because not doubts, but like questions, because everything has been a rise about it. It's like, this movie, I could say it answers a lot of questions, but at the same time, it does show a lot of, what's the word, continuity issues. It does make them present, and I think that was where the movie kind of lacked, or not even lacked, but just took a lot of people out of favor. But from what I got, from what I looked up, just to answer the question, how did the Tesseract get on Earth and blah 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 and all this stuff. So simply put, the Tesseract was on Asgard, but through that time, I guess Odin hid it on Earth, and that's why Red Skull and them had found it and everything else, and it took place, and it was up in the first Avenger, or Captain America, the first Avenger. Once Steve Rogers crashed his plane into the Atlantic Ocean, I believe it was the Atlantic Ocean or whatever, and he was down there, Howard Stark, and I believe they even have it up in the first Avengers, so if you go back and watch it, you will see it. Howard Stark, in trying to find Steve Rogers' body and the plane and all that stuff, he couldn't find Steve Rogers, but he did find the Tesseract. So it was in Howard Stark's possession. And somehow between that movie and this movie, somehow Marvel, which that's another thing I'm going to get to, Marvel, Dr. Lawson, had got it from Howard Stark. And then that's where it got to the point that it was at, and in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s possession, as we got to the end of the movie. So that's what it was. Odin, Earth, Red Skull, Captain America, Howard Stark, Dr. Lawson, S.H.I.E.L.D., and then everything else is history. So that should just end that debate, and just simply, people, all you gotta do is look it up. There are videos on YouTube that show, even before this movie came out, the timeline of just the Tesseract and Infinity Stones, where they were at in certain movies and everything else, and everything. So just look it up. You don't have to go on and be like, what happened? That don't make any sense. Like, Google search, YouTube. You have all these tools to your advantage. Look it up, just like I did, because I was even questioning it until I looked it up, and I'm like, okay, I remember that. But what was I at? Okay, I wasn't even far from the whole Marvel thing, but matter of fact, I'm gonna get into it. When it comes to Marvel and her being a woman, I know a lot of people might have a lot of hate toward that, like, why she gotta be a woman? They did this with the Ancient One and blah blah blah. Whatever fits the role. I mean, Marvel was a guy in the comic books you wouldn't expect her. You wouldn't expect Marvel to be a woman in the movie, and that was another thing. I didn't have a problem with that, so I can't. I'm not about to really speak on it or whatever, but I feel like it probably would have been a better reveal had it not been revealed before it was actually revealed, or it was actually revealed before it was revealed. Because Jude Law's character, I really need to get his name. He says it to Captain Marvel when she's telling him about everything that she's found out, and he said that like, oh, that's Marvel. She was undercover agent, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And then when she comes out and says it to her, saying like, my name is Marvel. It was just the way that the line was delivered made it seem like that should have been the point where we found out that that was Marvel, not by Jude Law's character. And it was like, why did, I don't know, it was just the way that she said that. So I felt like he shouldn't have said the name prior. That way when we got to that point, it would have been like, okay, yeah. Or, it would have been more of a shock. Would have been like, oh wow, that was a twist, blah blah blah. But I don't know. I just think that they just kind of executed that wrong. And just getting off of that, where am I at? Oh yeah, Nick Fury's eye. Nick Fury's eye. I know a lot of people are back and forth on that. Some of them are okay with it, and some of them, I ain't gonna say a lot of people like it. A lot of people are okay with it. Some people might find it hilarious. Like, we thinking that's just big, dramatic stuff, and it was just something simple. This badass agent from S.H.I.E.L.D. and all this stuff, mysterious, and he lost his eye to a cat. Like, wow, okay, yeah. And there's some people that just really hate it. They're just like, oh my God, that was stupid. I'm in the realm of, like, I didn't hate it, but I kind of thought that they probably could have did a little bit more. I don't know. It was just, I thought that they were going to do something to where they were going to constantly play around with it, which they kind of did, but not too much. I thought they were going to do something to where it's like something keeps happening where it almost happens, but then more than just the car accident. I thought it was going to be something like he get into a fight and somebody has a knife and they about to do it and it comes right close to his eye, but then it stopped, and then bam, bam, and then maybe like 5 other times where something hit his eye or come close to it and he's stopping, and then finally the 6th time, something happens and then bam, he loses an eye. But I wasn't really a big fan of it. It was just like, really, after all this speculation, which it wasn't really anything that was too much on people's minds, where it's like, we need to know how Nick Fury lost his eye. Y'all need to give me that. It wasn't anything like that, but just by the way he set it up in, like, I believe it was the Winter Soldier, the last time he trusted somebody, he lost an eye. You would think that it was like through betrayal of a friend or something like that, and to find out that it was just simply a cat scratch, it was like, really, I don't know. It just, whatever. It reminds me of The Last Jedi, where something was set up before, and then later on somebody come in and be like, the thing that was set up that was supposed to be major? Nah, we're just gonna throw it out the garbage. This is what it is. It seemed like something like that. But also, to follow with that, I noticed something from when, I don't know, a lot of people caught on to it. I don't even know if it was like really put in there to where people could, where it was just kind of like a link or connection. But when Nick Fury picks up the cat before he got his eye scratched, and he was like, I'm trusting you not to eat me. Him to use those words, I'm trusting you not to eat me, and then he gets his eye scratched, and then in Winter Soldier you hear him saying the last time he trusted somebody he lost an eye. I just thought that was a connection that if they didn't mean it, it was kind of cool, but if they did mean it, it still was cool. So I kind of got that, and I noticed that from the second time I watched it. I was like, okay, I get it. They did set it up to where he did use the word trust in both scenarios, when before it happens and then after it. That way you can be like, yeah, he did trust it wasn't somebody, but he did have trust in something, and he lost an eye for it. So even though the cat didn't eat him, but he still put the word trust in there. So maybe they could have said, I'm trusting you not to hurt me, and then that, but that probably wouldn't have made any sense. Trusting you not to eat me made more sense. Where am I at? Okay, so we found out how the Avengers got their name, and it comes from Captain Marvel, from him looking at a picture, and on the side of Captain Marvel's ship, it does say Avenger or whatever, and so he took it. I think it was like the Protector Initiative, and then he took that out and just renamed it Avengers Initiative after Captain Marvel, which they could have done without that. They really could have done without that. But I see how it fits in from just the last kind of last conversation that he had with Coulson about Captain Marvel leaving, and that they're gonna need some heroes to defend Earth and everything while she's not there. And I could see that it fits it. I felt like it was kind of lazy. It wasn't needed, but in just kind of like the structure of how they had that conversation happen, I feel it was kind of needed. So 50-50 or whatever. But also, speaking on that, I know a lot of people have the question, and it's been on YouTube, of why Nick Fury didn't call Captain Marvel during the invasion of New York and other things that happened on Earth, I guess you could say the invasion of Earth, or the invasion in New York and everything else. Because Ultron, yeah, at that time they had everything handled, but why didn't he call her then? And I look at it as like what he said in that conversation was that she is like a galaxy or whatever away. She's a far, far long way, and he's not gonna keep calling her when something like that, have her come all that way out her way to come protect Earth, and then leave far, far away, and then have to come all the way back. He don't want to keep doing that. So he wanted to have protectors here for Earth, to where he don't necessarily have to call her. And the reason why he didn't hit her up during that time was that he had the protectors. He had Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and the Hulk. He had all these protectors, and it was like, I guess it was like a scenario to where it's like, before I call her or have the need to call her, let me see what they can do. If they can protect Earth from this, then we know that we have our protectors, and she's not needed at this point in time. And so basically, that's more like the ideology behind it, is that he set up this crew to protect Earth. They're able to protect Earth. There's no need for Captain Marvel. He needs to let them do what they do. That way he'll know that we got this covered. So it was one of those type of scenarios. So that's my whole idea of why he didn't call Captain Marvel during the attack on New York. It's just he needed to let the Avengers do what they do. Because if she came in and saved the day like that, then it would have been like, okay, why did you put us all together? What was the point of this? If you got somebody that could take care of this, why? And it's like, I don't even know if Captain Marvel simply could have handled it all by herself anyway. She probably would have needed help. So who knows? Who knows? But I thought the coloring of her suit was lazy. I didn't like it. Maybe some people did like it, and maybe some people thought it made sense. But it was like we never got a hint earlier in the film that she can change the color of her suit. Maybe if we did do that, it was like whatever, but it was like, just, I don't know, it just seemed kind of, I don't know, I just didn't like it. I really didn't. And it's whatever. And then having the little girl, how she basically was able to do that, it was like, how is she able to figure that out? I don't know. I just simply don't know. I didn't like that. But when it comes down to it, yeah. And I felt like they could have dived more back into her background. I felt like that probably could have made us more personal with the character, because from what we got, she didn't have a good relationship with her father. And she had a decent relationship with her brother, but it was like he wasn't mentioned, so she disappeared. What happened to her brother? Is her brother still alive? Is her father still alive? Like, why wouldn't she want to know more about her family and everything else? Like, I don't know, maybe they're going to cover that in the next movie that she's in, Captain Marvel 2, because it's going to be a part 2. It's going to be a part 2. Maybe they cover that, but I just figured, like, you had that aspect of her life in the movie, why not explore it, even just for a little bit, have acknowledgement of, her wanting to know her family and not just her friend and all that and just the stuff that was part of her career. You would think that she would want to know her family coming back since she has no memory, but hey, I mean, it's whatever. And just speaking on that, I really did enjoy the acting of the actress. I think what's her name, Lashana Lynch, that played Maria. She was a shining part of this movie. Ben Mendelsohn was, even though I didn't like the whole scroll thing, but I did enjoy him. But the character Maria was good. Like, one of the best scenes for me was the scene where Captain Marvel did find out everything. But in connections to that scene was when she first found out that Carol was alive, and her expression to her saying that, like, her finding out that aliens exist and everything else isn't the hard part. The hard part was knowing that her friend that she thought had died didn't die, that she was out there too stubborn to die, and this and that. Like, just how she delivered that line, you really can feel her loss and just how she felt and everything else. Like, I really did love that. And just like I said, added to it, like, the favorite part of that movie for me was when she found out everything, when they was listening to, like, the disc with the black box or whatever, the recordings of the black box, and everything was racing back to her, and how she found out everything. And when Ben Mendelsohn's character was like telling her, like, everything that is wrong and blah blah blah, like, that to me was the best part out of this whole movie. Like, that scene I can watch over and over and over again, from when she first gets to, like, her friend crib all the way to, like, the end where she tells her that, like, she's the strongest person that she ever knew, even before the whole fire hands thing. And I'm just like, that was a dope scene. That was truly a dope scene. And I really, really did like that. Favorite scene out of the whole movie. And I like the whole scene where they were rewinding, like, her memories and trying to dig through there and find Dr. Lawson and everything. To me, that was another good part. Like, this movie is filled with good parts. It may not be one of the best MCU films, but it does have a lot of good to it. Like, I know a lot of people say, like, it was slow, this and that. To me, it wasn't slow. I enjoyed every single part of this movie. And that was one of the best parts. It's just, I love the way that they did that, how they was going through her memory, and then even just, like, changing directions from when she stopped talking to Dr. Lawson, how they wanted her to focus on certain things, that way they can get certain, like, information out of her memories. I just love that. It's like, oh, rewind that. No, bring her back. Look closer, look a little bit closer, zoom in. Like, I just love that. I love the way that they did that. Like, man, yeah, thinking about that, I really want to watch that movie again just for those few scenes and everything else. I really did like that. One of the things that I did mention in my review was it had a lot of shaky cam. The fighting, you can tell, was good, but it just wasn't handled good. Like, I just hate when you do have good action scenes, but it's just a lot of shaking cam. And it's just really with the fighting. Like, it had a lot of things where the camera was moving with the fighting. It's like, man, you spent a lot of hours more than likely choreographing these moves and just working it out to where they would look good. Just show it. Why are you so afraid to show it? I cannot get that. But the action, the fighting looked good. I just hated the shaky cam. I just really did. I know I mentioned that, but I just truly hate it. And the one thing I didn't get about the scrolls, like the scroll, like Captain Marvel mentioned to Nick Fury when she was trying to find out if he was a scroll or not. She had mentioned that, like, doing a simple blood test would would not work because of the simple fact that they can copy the DNA. And I'm just thinking, like, logically that don't make any sense. I could see them copying, like, Mystique from X-Men. I could see them looking at you, being able to copy your mannerisms, the way you look, the way you sound, and everything else. But copying your DNA, that doesn't make any sense. So if they have, like, black blood, they can copy the redness of your blood even if they don't know how your blood looks. They can copy if, like, say you have like a disformed heart, they can copy that. They can copy everything down to like the DNA of your body. Like, that don't make any sense. Like, that's like a person looking at a clock and imitating every single aspect of the clock. Like, if you don't know how the inner workings of a clock work, let's say if a clock is brand new to you, and you just look at it, you probably can like construct the outside of it, how it looks on the outside, but you won't be able to get it to work the way it works, or exactly the way it works, all the parts and everything else, because you don't know how the inside of it works. And that really did not make any sense to me. So I'm like, yeah, really, they can copy everything? Really, like that's some crazy superpowers. It really is. But in any case, I loved the scene where they're fighting where she's fighting the scroll that turned into the old lady on the train, and how the people are reacting to when she first punched him. That dude that just come out of nowhere holding his mouth like, whoo! I'm like, that is hilarious, and just how they fighting and everything else, and just, I don't know, like, I feel like people were reacting like realistically, but non-realistically, because yeah, if a woman punches just straight up out of nowhere, just punches an old lady, you're gonna be like, what the heck? You're gonna be wanting to stop it, and they try to stop it or whatever. But if you see the old lady swinging on the pole, kicking and fighting back, getting flipped over, getting up, and all this stuff, and this old lady looks like she can't even carry a bag of groceries by herself, it's like, you might want to back up, because this old lady, she obviously can handle herself. Yeah, she might be getting like punched around, but she is like landing some hits on this young woman who can obviously fight. So I don't know, like, but I just found it so funny though. I just found it so funny, their reaction, especially when it ended where the scroll had turned into the man and he had jumped up on top of the train, and then as she went after him, the man was looking like, what the hell? Like, I just love that. And just speaking of that, in relation, the Stan Lee cameo, I loved it. And I can also jump to the other tribute that they did to him, but I'm gonna get through this. Just have him reading. I didn't know, 'cause I haven't seen Mallrats, so I didn't know that he was up in the movie. I didn't know when he was reading. I knew that he was reading something. I thought it was like a newspaper or something. But he was reading something, saying something, and then she comes across him, puts down the page, and kind of looks at him, and he smiles, and then she smiles too. That right there was perfect. It was perfect. Perfect. I don't know how I can explain. And it's not just because I'm a a Marvel lover. Let's just put it like this: a comic book movie lover and all this stuff. And I respect Stan Lee and what he did. Even though I'm not a comic book reader, I respect everything that he has done for just geeks and nerds and people like me who love his characters and everything else, who grew up on his characters. Like, I respect that. And yeah, it hit me when he did die. And just to see what they did with it, they handled it perfectly. I feel like the whole thing with her smiling back at him, that was something added after he had passed, and they did it perfect. And just the whole tribute, like, I was watching the John Campea podcast, and when he did the review on it, he was talking about they do something in the beginning and all that stuff. I mean, he kind of gave it away, but not really. I kind of knew that in the beginning sequence, at the beginning of the movie, with the whole title of Marvel and everything else, that they were going to do that. Instead of having all the Marvel characters, it was going to be Stan Lee. So I kind of was expecting that, but seeing it actually on the big screen, it was good. It was good. I love how they did that, and then followed it up with "Thank you, Stan." It almost makes you want to tear up, especially if you are a comic book movie lover or just a comic book lover. If you know Stan Lee and you love Stan Lee for what he's done, it's like it kind of gets you right off the bat. It kind of gets you, and I love how they did that, the tributes and everything. I'm really wanting to see what they do with him for Endgame and Far From Home. So yeah. Where was I at? Let me find my way. Actions on the train. Okay. Uh, okay. And the one thing I had to think about. Why did it take Coulson so long to realize that Nick Fury and all the other cops had left after, left him at Blockbuster? Because he did make a statement saying that, like, he was gathering evidence and blah, blah, blah. But you would think that some of them saw him go up in there and they probably would have got him. Or he probably would have heard them pull off because they were going after her. They were on, like, basically a chase. So you would think that you would have cut on the siren and all this stuff and he would have saw it. It took him almost like about 5-something minutes after they pulled off for him to realize, like, hold on, no one's here. Why did y'all leave without me? It was like, what? But I did like that little twist, though, like, you thinking that, it's just Coulson the thing, and then you find out that it's not him. So I love how they did that twist. That was one of the twists that you didn't see it coming. It wasn't a major twist, but yeah. But it just, like, why did it take them so long to realize it? They just made Coulson seem so stupid in this movie. They just made him seem so stupid. But I also love the funniness in this movie and the whole thing where where Ben Mendelsohn's character comes up in there, up in her friend's house, and he had said, like, referring to his power, saying that, like, it allows him to get into places that he's not supposed to be. And then she says that, like, her friend Maria says, I'm gonna put my foot in places where it's not supposed to be. And he kind of looks at her confused, like, am I supposed to guess where that is? And Nick Fury's like, that's your ass. Yeah, I felt like, yeah, that was funny. It do have, like, spark some moments where the comedy do really, really work. And I mean, the comedy for the most part did work in this movie. But yeah, that was funny. But also, even to get to Nick Fury, before I get too far in my notes, because I don't even think I wrote it down in my notes. But I hate how they handle Nick Fury up in here. In this, I see that he was new to everything as far as, like, the alien invasions and, just aliens and everything else. But in the other movies, they made him seem like such a badass. They made him seem like a dude. He was so mysterious and everything else. In this movie, it kind of took it away from the whole eye thing to just how he handled himself and everything else. It made him just kind of like second rate. It really did. Like, it took away that mysterious of Nick Fury, which I think that they should have not did the whole eye thing in this movie. They should have just left it out. If they would have kept doing the whole thing where they kept teasing, like, maybe this is it, maybe this is where he loses his eye, maybe this is where he loses his eye, and eventually at the end of the movie he still has his eye, or maybe even made it the end credit scene. But even if they would have left it out completely, I think that probably would have been way better, made it more of a mystery, because we don't necessarily need to know how he lost his eye. Especially if it was something that punkish type of way, then it's like, whatever. But, I mean, I would have been okay with it, but it just kind of, like, leveled down his badassery and his, like, mystery. And I just kind of, like, I just really hated how they handled him. I felt like they could have handled him a little bit better, but hey, it's whatever. And just speaking on that, I'm surprised that a lot of people, they're talking about the feminist thing and everything about this movie. I'm surprised that they hadn't talked about just the lack of black people in here. Like, they were just so focused on Brie Larson and what she said and what they interpret from what she said prior to the movie. But I'm surprised that they hadn't looked at, like, Black Panther had, like, 2 white people part of the cast in the movie, and it was all black. And so Captain Marvel is the movie that's kind of like countering that, because it only has 3 black people and they're all supporting characters in an all white cast and all that stuff. I'm surprised people haven't gotten into an outrage about that. Like, I had noticed that. I'm like, I'm surprised people weren't saying this is the answer to Black Panther and everything in this lack of white people, and now this movie is a lack of black people. It just, I don't know. Like it seems stupid, but I'm surprised that no one has said anything about that or made a big old fuss about that in itself. But hey, it is whatever. Where did I leave off? Oh yeah, and then the part where like the plane crash and Captain Marvel and Marvel are getting out the plane and everything else, and Jude Law's character, I know I keep calling him Jude Law's character, but whatever. Jude Law's character shoot Marvel and instantly killing her, and then you see Captain Marvel or Karen Danvers, Veers, whatever you want to call her, she picks up the gun and aims it at him, and I'm just thinking like, why didn't he just shoot her right then and there? I mean, he had no problem shooting Marvel, like instantly killing her. Why didn't he shoot her? That way they could have found it. But it was like you kind of think like maybe he needed her alive so he can find the power source. But it's like, why wouldn't he shoot Captain Marvel and then as Marvel? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I guess you could say maybe she would be more inclined to tailing him than Marvel would have been. But it didn't make any sense why he kept both of them alive, and they could have just simply followed the, I don't know, whatever. It just didn't make any sense. And then right before she shot the power engine or whatever, and before she got her powers, it was like, why did she kind of announce that she was going to shoot it? And he had enough time to shoot her before she shot the engine, and he had his gun pointed at her. And what he do right before she shot it, he puts down his gun and tries to run toward her and stop it. It's like, you have your gun. All you had to do was pull the trigger and shoot her before she shot it. And if she would have shot, the thing right before you shot her, then it would be like, at least you tried. But at the same time, it was like, you had a chance to shoot her at least before she shot the thing, and you didn't do it. You ran toward her for some reason. Like, I'm like, really? Like, I don't know. How did you get to where you were at? But in any case, what's next? And then Ben Mendelsohn's character, when they were talking on the plane, talking about like, can you turn into a file cabinet and all that stuff? Nick Fury said, "Can you turn into a cat?" And he said, "What's a cat?" When a few scenes before, they had picked up and said, when Captain Marvel picked the cat up and said, like, "What, are you scared of the cat?" And then he was like, "That's not a cat. That's a flirkin." It was like, you know what a cat is from that point on, because if you can get the memories of the person that you inhabit, obviously you know what a lot of things is on Earth. Obviously you'll know what a cat is, because you just said it while she was pointing it up, saying like, "Are you scared of a cat?" referring to the thing that she was holding, and he even referred to it saying that that's not a cat, that's a flirkin. So more than likely, even just from that knowledge, you would know that that's a cat, and he says like, "What's a cat?" Like, I was just like, what? I could see if you said like, "Can you turn into a dog?" And then he's like, "What's a dog?" I could see that, but it was just inconsistent with that. Like, it just stood out to me. I'm like, okay, whatever. But nah, I mean, that's a nitpick, whatever. And of course, we find out how she got the name Veers, which is simply because after the blast, it tore apart her dog tag, which separated Dan from Vers, so they just saw it as Veers and gave her that name and everything else. And I felt that was kind of cool. Okay, yeah, kind of cool. I mean, you didn't see it at first because you didn't see the name or whatever written down. You just heard everybody just call her Veers, and blah, blah, and all that stuff. But then to come to find out that because of her dog tag being like torn apart after the blast, and him picking it up and seeing Veers on there, or how he pronounced it, Veers or whatever, then that's how her name came across. And it was like, okay, cool. It's nothing major, but I kind of like how they did that. Just gave her a new identity or whatnot. And I kind of like, and I'm going to get on two aspects of like Captain Marvel in itself. I like how she didn't take to her powers immediately. She still was learning as a warrior how to maintain her powers and use it and everything else. And I know a lot of people were talking about like Mary Sue this and blah, blah, blah and all that stuff. But all throughout the like movie, she's kind of training, and she has a lot of training as far as flying and everything else. I mean, not flying like Superman, but just being a warrior and everything else, and not giving up and all that. So it's like she has a lot of experience that can kind of guide her as far as using her powers and stuff. And even then, it was like she still was having help. And like, yeah, she was played down. She was struggling with her powers. That's why she wasn't able to take out too many people like that. Just like back to back, and just not even break a sweat. She still was getting hit and, this stuff and beat up because she was still kind of like handling her powers. And she wasn't like a straight, just like monster soldier. Like she really could not win in a hand-to-hand combat battle. I mean, she can against certain people, but when it comes to like Jude Law's character, say it again, Jude Law's character, she could not win in a hand-to-hand combat battle with him. So she still had some learning to do. She wasn't like the most fierce warrior, and more than likely without her powers or not the use of her powers, she probably couldn't even come close toe to toe with the other people in the group, all the people that were like in her group before. So she still isn't top notch a battle warrior like Thor, who has thousands of years of of like just fighting experience. Like she's still learning in certain aspects, so she's still kind of struggling. So I kind of got that, and I did like how they was just going with it. They didn't go fully on with it, but I see she was still struggling even with her powers, and that was the reason. So I like how she didn't truly take on to her powers like that, and she hasn't really discovered everything about her powers. She just learned how to control the whole thing, or just use the whole thing. So it's kind of similar to the whole Superman thing, where Superman had these powers all his life, but once like Zod came in, that's when he was able to let loose with his power and how it is. So it was like, yeah, he was struggling with it while during the fight, and that's with her. She didn't have the powers all her life, but the whole time that she had powers, she was basically able to control it with the thing in the back of her neck. So she didn't have full range to just let loose. And then when she finally did let loose, she still was kind of like figuring out how to control it like it is. So more than likely in Endgame, we figured out how, or she's going to figure out how to use it to where she can just bam, 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 bam. Hopefully she's not super, super overpowered, but yeah. And then Ronan, he could have been thrown out the movie. He had no impact on the film at all. It could have been any type of other person, or just not even a person at all. They didn't even have to have an aspect of a higher person other than, Jude Law's character. Like, you didn't have to have that other than the supreme intelligence. You didn't need anything else. It was just the supreme intelligence was kind of like the main bad guy. So why was Ronan there? I don't know. They could have did without his character. I thought he was going to have much of a bigger role, but he really didn't play anything significant. And then just his motivation after him dying up in Guardians of the Galaxy, you would think, like, why would they give him a line saying that we'll be back? Not for the, and then the dude says, like, for the power source? He's like, no, for her. Or not, he said, we're going to come back for the weapon. And then he says, for the power source, he's like, no, her. It was like, you would think, like, okay, he dies in Guardians of the Galaxy, so why would you insert that line? Maybe in part 2, he makes an appearance and he actually does go for her, but ends up not, succeeding. And then, events of the Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever happened. But as of right now, that line made no sense at all. Made no sense. But, yeah. And they basically set it up to where we get where she may get her name. Now, we didn't hear herself being referred to Captain Marvel, but when Nick Fury and her are washing dishes and he mispronounced Marvel by Marvel, and then she corrects him, he's like, I think Marvel sounds better. I think that in Endgame, we're going to find out that, yes, she calls herself Captain Marvel because Nick Fury said it, and it did sound nice. So she was already a captain. So she ends up calling herself Captain Marvel. So I think that's where they're more than likely going to give it up. But I see where they set it up at. And one thing that was kind of like inconsistent was that before it shows that she couldn't breathe in space because she had the mask thing covering her face when she was out in space and everything else. But when she, goes out in space at the end, she doesn't need anything covering her face. It's like she could just breathe out in space. And I guess you could say like her powers cover her face and it makes her, be able to breathe. But that still making any goddamn sense. I'm like, so I guess now she can breathe in space. I don't know. I mean, Thor can. He can survive and floating out in the space and everything else. So I guess anything's possible. But I mean, I don't know. That just didn't make any sense. It was like at the end of the movie, it's like, well, fuck it. We don't feel like animating the mask, so let's just make it to where she breathes out in space. So, but I guess that's a nitpick or whatnot. But yeah, so without all that, I'm gonna wrap this up with talking about the end credit scenes. The end credit scene, that's just throwaway. That was a waste of time. I hate when they do end credit scenes like that. But let's get into the the Avengers Endgame end credit scene. Now, I believe that is a part of Avengers Endgame because why wouldn't it be? Or maybe they chop it up when they get to Endgame, but they've done it before with Thor. Well, not with Doctor Strange, being that scene was in Thor Ragnarok. Chopped up, it was changed a little bit, chopped up or whatever, but essentially still the same scene. And then they had a scene in Ant-Man, one of the in the mid-credit scenes in Ant-Man being a scene from Civil War. So I believe that this scene will be in Avengers Endgame, and it was a really good scene. After seeing it 3 times, I got to examine more of it and everything else and understand what was going on. And it was a really good end credit scene. Even after, seeing it for the 3rd time, it was like before the end credit scene came on, my heart was still beating. It's like, man, I'm ready for Endgame. I'm ready for Avengers Endgame, and I just love the end credit scene with them seeing what the Page are doing and who is it, who was Nick Fury trying to get in touch with? Like Black Widow wants to see who's on the other end, and you can see that Black Widow is taking lead. I mean, she is a soldier. She is was a spy or is a spy or whatever. So she has that leadership skills, and she's just taking lead. Like she wants all this stuff to be handled, And then when Captain Marvel just shows up right behind her as she turns around saying, "Where's Fury?" It was like, oh shit, it's gotten real. We got Captain Marvel getting into this now. I mean, of course, we already knew that, but still in the same sense, it was one of those things where it was like, yeah, man, I can't wait to this. I can't wait to see this. So it shows me now that in the next Endgame trailer, we're going to go see we're going to see Captain Marvel in it. We're definitely going to go see Captain Marvel in the movie. Well, in the trailer or whatnot. And I don't know. I really did like the end credit scene. I really did. It didn't show too much, but to me, the end credit scene was way more exciting than the other trailers that we gotten from, Avengers so far. But yeah, man, I can't even. That's another podcast. But I really cannot wait to see it. But overall, yeah. Captain Marvel was a really good film. Wasn't the best. It wasn't the best. I'm not saying it's up there, top 5. May not even be top 10. But it is it is a good film. It is a really, really good film. Good enjoyment and everything else. And this was a lengthy first episode, but I mean, I had a lot to talk about. And I was planning on having like my nephew be a part of this first episode and just think how long it would have been if 2 people were talking about the scenes rather than just one. But hey, I had to get it off my chest. That's everything I need to talk about that's spoilerish about this movie. And yeah, Thank you guys for listening, and I will catch you guys on the next one. I don't know when that's going to be or how often I'm going to be dropping these, but I'm going to try and do it every week like I do the Take One podcast. But until next time, peace out.